Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Aspiration, Inspiration with me, Jayson George. Where as always, we aspire to inspire before we expire. And with Women's Month, I thought we should have a feature of some of the most inspiring women that have come across in our communities that come from our societies. And today we have Olivia Williams with us, and she hails from Delft. Olivia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello.
Olivia, so you are an aspiring attorney. Tell us a bit about, and you're a candidate attorney at Fair Bridges. Tell us a bit about how you came about studying law. Why law?
Okay, it's actually a very weird story. So what had happened was in my first year at university, I actually studied teaching, right?
Okay.
And then there was this one day we were in this one, I think the lecture or at that time the school education class this one.
Yeah.
And then we were sitting there, and I remember sitting with my friends, and it was the final period, and everyone is just so enthusiastic. So in my mind, at that point, I wanted to become an educator, and
Yeah.
that was my passion at that time. And then I just sat there thinking. So I think at some point you sit with your life, and assessing situations, and you're thinking, okay, what I want to do, and X, Y, and Z. How can I make a difference here or there? And then I remember it was sometime in September, and the very next day I was just roaming around the law faculty, and I was thinking, "Are your applications open?" And then they told me, "Yeah, our application's open." And that same day, I applied to transfer my transfer faculties, and that's how I came about studying law. I was just thinking, what is my passion? I was looking at my strengths, and I was looking at my weaknesses as well.
And I mean that's a very important evaluation, because sometimes we go with something because other people, tell us to do something, and we don't necessarily pursue our passions. Maybe our parents that put pressure on us, someone that just, I see something in you, and I see that you can be something, and then you just pursue that. But it's actually about pursuing your passions. And I mean, was it difficult for you transitioning from the one faculty into the next?
Yeah, at some point it was, because obviously the work is way different and for me it was more of just I don't know if the proper word is culture shock, but just getting into a different type of mindset and a different type of thinking. So that was a bit of the transition, but I feel like if you have a passion for something and you enjoy something, that it would work out at the end.
Yeah, definitely. And you are now a candidate attorney at Fair Bridges. Talk to us a bit about that experience and your experiences as a candidate attorney thus far at a firm like Fair Bridges.
Yeah. So for me, it was I think last year, starting as the first year, it wasn't quite in my plan to do my articles immediately after studying. I was planning on doing my master's, and then I took a chance, and we just come out with a bunch of different firms that are open day, and I just applied. It was the only firm I applied at. I took a chance, and I mean, you might as well just do things and see how life works out, or the anything you get fit into. Went for an interview, was brutally honest, said it was my first interview ever at a law firm. It was funny because I went there with a person, and I rained soaking wet, and I got there at the interview, and I was just like, oh, you have to suck it up. And yeah, thus far it has been a bit challenging, I'm not going to lie. They have the pros, they have the cons. You get days where you feel okay, you feel driven, and then there's days where something goes wrong. And I mean, it's part of learning where you stumble and fall, and you just have to basically dust yourself up and often get back on and get going and believe in yourself. So
yeah, and generally speaking, are you happy with the choice that you made to study law or to practice law?
at times I do feel, did I do the right thing? But at the end of the day, I know exactly what what my goal was.
Yeah.
And also for me, one of the things that has always driven me to law is that, being in the community where you always have people having this preconceived notions, or they think they know certain things, and at the end it's just because there's a lot of hearsay, but it's not actually the law. So my thing has always been, how can I, help or assist the next person in saying, like, I'm not saying I know everything, like every day we learn something more, but it's just keeping that open mind and educating oneself, as well as, others.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, there's also this. I mean, in our communities, people assume when you tell them you're a lawyer, they just assume you do criminal law, you do, what? Now you might have to defend people, and they're gonna call you when they're in trouble, and what type of law do you do at Fair Bridges as a candidate attorney? What have you been exposed to?
So we, like most firms, where you a couple of months in a certain rotation. Mainly, we've done litigation. But I'm currently in the estates department, which is it's been quite nice. For me, I don't enjoy just the one area of law. I enjoy various areas of law because I just feel like learning is just something that I'm keen on doing. So currently with deceased estate, you do winding up of estates, looking at wills and trusts and all of those. So it's been quite nice.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it's a great experience, and it's relevant to the communities that we are from also, and it makes you it empowers you so much more to be able to assist people, because I think when people want to study law, and I mean for me personally, it's always a thing of you want to help people, man. Like you want to be able to assist someone if they come to you, with certain queries, and I think that's a very it's a very helpful thing to practice from the communities that we are from. And then I wanted to ask, I wanted to ask about your studies and where you are from, because I mean law is a very noble career. It's a very I can say it on here. It's a very white dominated career. A lot of people with privilege practicing law. For you as a woman of color, coming through the ranks, did you face any challenges? Did you have any challenges coming through and pursuing a career in law thus far?
Look, I've never, how do I put it now, when it comes to my background or things that I had to struggle to go through, for me it was never a different type of option for me, or I don't feel like my obstacles or what I went through was in vain. At the end of the day, like coming from going to school in Rocklands back then, at Glendale High, and then matriculating at a school in Delft. For me personally, or one thing that I would always say is that when I'm sitting in my lecture room, you get students coming from various backgrounds, from whether you're from a more Wallo family, etc. We all sitting here in the same lecture. We're getting the same work. For me, I feel like at that point, it's what you do with your life from that point onwards. It's what drives you. Am I going to let my my circumstances define me as an individual? What am I going to do to break the cycle? Because I had a friend that always told me, like, there's this cycle that, especially as a person of color, that everyone expects you to do X, Y, and Z. Like, you should work here, and there. But you need to find a way, to break the cycle, to do something that is going to be different, or that's going to make you proud of yourself, because at the end of the day, you get different people saying, oh, like, do this for this one and that one. No, like, do something for yourself. Like, exactly what I mean, more or less.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah. I mean, it's a very unpopular opinion to have, because I mean, we cannot necessarily, how can I now say, we cannot just brush over the fact that people are from different backgrounds and may have different resources. But I mean, I always used to say, and it's instilled in me, that there's no Model C university, man. you know, and you can come from a school like your Glendales and, you know, like the school in Delft I've gone to, and it doesn't mean that you won't necessarily do well and won't have the ability to flourish at university or in your career. I mean, that's precisely what this platform is about, you know, and people are doing well. It doesn't matter where we are from. I think we just need to sometimes let go of that and actually just, you know, push through and, as you say, try to break the cycle, which is difficult.
Yeah,
it's quite difficult.
Yeah, at times it can be difficult, but for me, it's always been, I've never been ashamed to say where I'm from. Even when I'm with, you know, when you're with friends, you're with colleagues. Like I'm from Delft. I matriculated at Rosendal. It's part of who I am as a person. It's me. It's what built me. It's what made my character. It's, you know, the educators that you had back at school, they all form part of what you like become in life and what your ideals are, and it depends on you as a person what you want to become one day, and how you feel like you're going to make a difference not only in your life but in others as well. So that's always been my time, like how can I help the next person? So I mean, that's part of the reasons why I wanted to look, because you mentioned something earlier where, you know, you get people in the community saying, oh, are you going to be my lawyer one day? And it's always a criminal case. It's never like, let me start a company, help me start my company. It's always, are you going to represent me in court when I do exams? So I said, no, don't do that.
People just want to catch on nonsense.
Yeah. It's the best thing when you end up going to the shops, you're walking to the Nigerians just to buy your ~5 airtime, and then you just get stopped to do lawyer things. Like, no, I don't know. Okay, no, I'm not buying ~5 airtime anymore.
No. Sorry. I'm sorry. You moved into the big leagues now, huh? What did you say?
Yeah, Wi-Fi is a thing which is more problematic. The Wi-Fi is more problematic than your actual data.
I mean, I hate like when it now comes time to top up and maybe you've run out. It's the worst.
Yeah, the end of the month.
Yeah. One day, I think I'm sure we'll be, you know, we'll have the unlimited, you know, high speed, expensive Wi-Fi. But yeah, that's
one day.
It's part of the journey. Olivia, and I mean, did you face any challenges that you maybe want to share with someone that's listening? You know, I mean, it's great, you know, being at the level where you're at now. But did you face any challenges, you know, getting to where you are now? Whether it was, you know, growing up, you know, in parts of Mitchell's Plain or in Delft.
Yeah, look, I feel like everyone's journey, like I mentioned, is different, and everyone faces obstacles or challenges. With me, again, there was a lot of things, you know, personally as well, whether it's within your personal life or outside. I remember when I was studying, I was working 2 to 3 jobs at a time as well. But it was only, you know, to get things on my CV, and because one thing that, especially when you're studying law, when a firm approaches you, they always, or you approach a firm, you always hear things such as they're looking for the well-rounded candidate. So you can be sitting there with your millions of A's, but you need to also do things, you know, outside of just studying. And I've done tons of things outside of studying. Like, if I can even delve into my CV, like during December holidays, I was a cashier at Pick n Pay. You know, I worked at retail, sometimes during my studying as well, and then with my full-time studies, I somehow got into the sports department there, did sports, became the chairperson of our sports department. For me, that was all things, you know, keeping me busy. I always had my family or my mother telling me, oh, you're constantly busy, when do you rest? But for me, it's always been, if you're working towards your goals, like, I'll rest the day where I feel like this is what I've done enough. But at this point, I'm still young. There's still a lot of things that I want to accomplish and achieve as well. So I've had a couple of obstacles. I mean, both in my schooling career as well. I think during my school at Rosendal, I was very vocal. I was just, you know, I've always believed for sticking up for the little guy, if I can put it up that way. So I'd always end up fighting battles which was not my own at times. Like, you know, just I didn't believe that like, I didn't like it when someone was treated unfairly. So I've always had that in me, that drive to, do something else. So
Yeah.
I've had situations where I've had, both challenges in my personal life as well. Not something that I necessarily want to delve into, but I mean, one thing that's important is that people just need to understand is that we all have challenges in life. Don't compare yours to the next person's.
Yeah.
Don't feel like, oh, mine is small compared to someone else's. At the end of the day, your small thing could be affecting you as well. So, yeah, I've had many cases where people feel like, oh, this is wrong in my life, but that happens in someone else's. Like, yeah, you can, you sympathize with people, but don't feel like what you are going through or what you are facing is not hard or difficult at that point, because things can break you down. You just, at times it is a bit difficult, to constantly have a positive mindset. But like I mentioned, with me, it's always been, what is my drive? What is my end goal? Like, things get difficult, you stumble and fall. But at the end of the day, when you're working towards something, you need to try and figure out, like, what am I going to do different in life? How am I going to, learn from this or use this as a learning curve?
Yeah, definitely. And I agree 100% with you. I mean, I was chatting to an industrial psychologist, and, she mentioned the same thing in one of our previous conversations. And she mentioned the same thing, that you need to be, find things that can set you apart, man, things that can set you apart from the next person. Because everyone's going to have degrees. People are going to come with their degrees, and, what do you have that's going to set you apart? And I think that's very important. Thanks for sharing that also from your perspective. And I mean, you mentioned that you liked fighting other people's battles. Probably also why a career is appropriate. I've heard a little birdie told me that you are a boxer. A boxer.
Yes.
Talk about that.
Okay, so I don't know how this came about. Look, growing up with my cousins, especially from the Mitchells Plain area, so they were all, the most of them were guys mainly. So for me, that was, my culture, like them gaming, watching anime and things like that, like going to karate, and that was just my life. And then I somehow became this big WWE fan. Like, I was obsessed with WWE. I remember in my matric year, I actually went to go and watch them live. It was just this biggest thing. And then at my first year at university, that was during orientation week, we had peer facilitators, or PFs as we would call them. So I remember my PF took us around to the sports department, and he's like, "Oh, I heard there was a boxing gym," but it was just like something he just said, and then I don't know what I was thinking, but it just switched on in my head, and I'm like, "Oh, that's a good idea." And that very same day, I marched to the boxing gym. I asked a couple of questions, and then a week later, when university started, I started training immediately. Like, I don't know exactly how I got to that point, but it just became a passion. And after a while, I was the only female there with the team. And this is another thing that, I felt like, I don't know what I was thinking. It's still up until today, but it became my passion. It was quite intimidating, but what I enjoyed about, my coach during that time and my boxing team, even though I was the only female at that point, was there was no setting us apart. Like, whatever you were doing during the training, I was doing as well. If I couldn't, I couldn't. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to lie, it was a bit intimidating, because the guys were really good. They, with like SA champs and things like that, they were extremely, extremely good. But they were also extremely supportive. And, feeling comfortable in a gym like that. It was just the level of respect we had as boxers for each other, and the level of protection we had over each other, which it sort of helped me, like, ease into things, like during competitions. It was insane. Like, I had a couple of blue eyes before, but I mean, it's part of the territory.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's a great sport. I did boxing once, and I think I'll do it again. Because I mean, I was fine in the fight, because I mean, I do karate, so that helped in the boxing. But it's just like, to take so many headshots, you know, and just still be able to think afterwards, and still, you know, having to retaliate, and you think our strategy while you I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll leave it for you guys to to do the boxing part. But and there's another thing I wanted to ask you about, you know, and I think it's an issue in amongst our peers. At starting at the bottom. You know, and I think a lot of us want to have things fall into our laps. And I mean, you mentioned that you work 3 jobs to be able to study, but then also those jobs were not necessarily, you know, office jobs or jobs where, because I mean, working in a place like Pick and Pay, for example, a lot of people, and I'm not bashing those professions, those people doing those things, because I think it's important, and I think it's a way of earning a living. But what advice do you have for someone that are looking at those roles and they're like, no, I don't want, I want to, you know, start in an office job. I don't want to go and maybe sweep the streets or clean. I don't want to go and be a packer. I don't want to be who doesn't want to start there. What advice do you have for a person maybe like that?
Look, like I mentioned, you need to be realistic with the situation that you're in, especially with your financial backing or your financial background. Like yes, NSFAS is available, but for me it was always like, okay, you need to, you know, pay them back when you're done studying and things like that. So which was fine by me. And so that was, I mean, that obviously helps all students, you know, during our time of studying. But at the end of the day, as a student, you also need, you know, that extra income, because there's always something extra that you need to do, or whatever your situation is at home. So for me, my advice would be realistic. Like what I had to do was I had to sit at home and I had to, you know, draw up a chart like, this is the position I'm in. What am I going to do? So like I said, number one, don't be ashamed of what you're doing, where you're coming from. It's the reality you were born into. I don't think most of us were born, you know, with a silver spoon in their mouth, so to say. So for me, like, don't be ashamed. Like working that time during Pick and Pay I think it was during December holidays for a couple of times. I would be, you know, being a cashier in the till. I'd see someone who studies with me, like, oh, come to my till, like beep beep, like it's. I don't regret any of those experiences because, like I mentioned, it builds characters, it builds my CV. You need to find a way, you know, to work yourself out of where you want to be. You can't just expect to, at times, okay, you do get some people that are lucky, you know, that, or depending on the field or career that they're in, that they get that first office job. But there are some of us, you know, that need to, you know, do that extra little thing to make myself stand out from the candidates. Because especially within our country as well, we at this point we need to work hard, and there's a lot of other people working hard as well. And that's why for me it was a culture shock, you know, studying law as well. So you're thinking you're coming from high school, like, oh, I'm coming from high school, I have my distinctions A, B, and C. You will get knocked a peg down or two because everyone else is coming from high school with their distinctions. Like, you're no longer the smartest one, Jayson, by the way. There's more other, you know, smart people as well.
I feel it.
Sorry, I had to bring that out. I had to do that for my cousin. I'm so sorry. I had to do that for so yeah, so you have all these other people as well with their dreams and their aspirations. So you need to think, what can I do to stand out from the rest of the crowd or the rest of the pack?
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with you. Even though you chowed me personally, it's fine. But it's true. Because I mean, now, I mean, I don't know. I suppose I can't say it on here. Matriculating for me with 8 distinctions, being where I'm from, that was huge. That's up so nicely. You know, getting to UCT, getting scholarships. But then you get to university and in law school, and now you have to be humbled, you know. And I always tell the story of when I failed property law for the first time, and I wanted to leave law school. And I think property is that course that humbled almost everyone, you know. And I was one of the people. And I mean, you know, the earlier you deal with that kind of failure and that kind of, you know, setback, and getting through those challenges, the better it is for you, because it, as you say, it builds character. It sets you up for next time you face something like that, you deal with it much better, you know. You deal with it much better. And then, so advice for someone that wants to study law. How did you go about, you know, your you know, applying for bursaries or for NSFAS, and you know, what advice do you have for someone in terms of, you know, what they have to do while at school and studying towards, you know, or working towards going into a career in law?
Okay. So number one, I'm saying this on behalf of all law students at the beginning, don't do it. Secondly, everyone always says that, don't do it.
Yeah.
With law, I think my approach was at that point was just like I mentioned, I have a passion for it. Constantly reading. That is what is important. You should love to read. During, I think the hard working starts from your schooling career as well. So obviously you don't just, not anyone or everyone who applies for law, or even for any other degree, just gets in immediately. So work hard during your schooling career. I remember studying for law as well. I belonged in different societies and things like that. Like, get actively involved. Like, you can study law but when it comes to the practical aspect of it, it's a bit different. And I mean, as a candidate attorney, I know it was a shock for you, maybe, you know, going in, serving and filing, etc. So try and do all of those things with NSFAS or applying for scholarships. I don't know how it exactly works with scholarships or things. I know you have to write motivations. I think you can. I don't know if you can elaborate more on that. But when you're applying, constantly follow up. Don't just apply, you know, for NSFAS or whatever bursaries and just leave it at that, thinking that, you know, this is how things are going. Actively apply, and then follow up, make phone calls, irritate people, because become involved in your process. That's the only way you're going to have, you know, peace of mind at night, saying or thinking that I've done everything I can to, you know, make sure that the proper procedures were followed and that I've covered all of my bases.
No, I mean,
and also during studying, for me, one thing that's important is also picking your friends. When you're studying, like you're going to get those friends that you know you love hanging out with them, but during exam time, like, this is my time. I was lucky enough to have a group of friends where most of our time, you know, it revolved around working. It was, you know, sitting in the library. When it was test, it was studying. It was like, okay, there's a case that was long. Let us all, you know, divide it amongst ourselves, you know, summarizing case law and things like that to make it easy on yourself. I think we weren't selfish with sharing work either, in terms of, like, you know, study notes and things. Like, get you a group of friends that, you know, works hard and also has that, you know, that drive to do better. And if I'm not going to lie, like, I failed the paper too as well, but I mean, whether I had reasons why or not, it kicks you in the gut, but you know, you have different opportunities as well. Like, work hard. Just try your best.
Thank you.
I mean, it's more easier to say than actually do, because things happen, and especially now with young people as well. Like, during studies, you get kicked by things such as depression or anxiety especially during the exam time. Like, the level of anxiety that most students have, and I know that was one of my biggest challenges during university, was, you know, dealing with anxiety. But you need to you know, find ways. Like, different study methods work differently for people, so you can't expect to study, or I can't expect to study the same way, you know, Jayson did, and because it might not work for me. So find what works for you as a person.
I think that's important advice, because not everything works for everyone. You know, you may be a visual learner, you may be someone like me. I write things down and I need to write it down again, and then I need to you know, read it and write it down again. You may have a photographic memory where you can read something once and then that's it, you know.
I don't really know, I had a photographic memory. That was like, I was so jealous. Like, how do you get that right?
Yeah.
Hated it.
So some of us have to sit down, and put in the hours. And I think, it's you have to work hard and you also have to work smart. You
Yeah.
gauge how much time you have to do stuff. And then just on that point of scholarships that you asked me to touch on, I think and you also mentioned about following up, and taking charge of the process. I think that's very important because when I applied for my scholarship, you also need to know the place that you're applying to for the scholarship. You need to research those things and know exactly the criteria that they apply and touch on those points in your application. It's not like a generic type of thing where you can just put things in and just use your normal CV, and because you have to submit the CV, those things. And I think a lot of the times people just take the same CV and they throw it in everywhere, and then you wonder why you don't get the job, but you actually didn't tailor it for a specific purpose. So I think that's very important. But yeah, it takes like motivations, application forms, and obviously making sure that you're following up and taking charge of that process. And then I wanted to ask, so it is Women's Month, and we're celebrating our women in our country. And for you as a young professional and as a woman of color, what does it mean currently for you to be a woman in South Africa?
Look, currently what's happening in our country, especially when it comes to females, we currently facing this high number or levels of domestic violence. So it is quite a scary time during our country. You hear stories every single day. So as a female, you constantly, you have that anxious feeling when you drive around, or you have to be somewhere, or you feel unsafe in an area. So I feel like more exposure needs to be given to that. Yes, we speak about certain things until failure, but at what point, is it enough? As a female in general, I've always, seen myself as breaking barriers or not putting myself in a box, like thinking that this is what I'm supposed to be as a female. Hence the reason why I got, actively involved in things such as boxing, and then also chairing the new legal commission as well. Like, it's all things that as a female you need to think. Well, I can't think for other females, but as a female personally, we should always have that drive and that passion. And how do you break this preconceived notions of, as a female you should be doing X, Y, and Z, you shouldn't be doing this or that. Even in a career such as being in law, where it's still currently a male predominant male dominant career. The same with something like boxing, it's still male dominant. I think that you should just try and break that cycle, and more females should just be out there supporting each other. Even looking at things on social media, you constantly here and there have females breaking each other down. Always think about, how am I going to uplift the next person? So that has always been one of my thoughts, like, how can I lift my fellow my friends, or my colleagues, or my peers, because as a female, or as females, especially in our country, there's such a lot of things happening. So instead of turning the side eye, or just like blindly going through life, what can I do as a female to make a difference and to make a stand with what's happening, especially in our country? It's a serious thing, and that's part of the reasons why I'd like to do something like my master's next year, and maybe focus on human rights law, and specifically when it comes to females. Like, we always hear people speaking on these topics, but is it loud enough? If you understand what I'm saying, like, is it sinking into to people such as the perpetrators and things like that. So it is a bit tricky, or a bit dangerous currently at our time as a female, not just in our country but in the entire world. So
Thank you for sharing that. And You know, I mean, when you it just made my heart so happy when you said that you're going to, pursue a master's, and I believe empowerment is also one of the biggest tools that we can use, to make sure that our voices become louder, and to show people, what is possible. And I think empowerment or personal empowerment is so important. But I also need to say that I think men need to join in on the conversation. I think men need to we really need to start protecting our women. We really need to start having these conversations with one another.
Definitely.
Because it's so easy for us to just have a chat and have a laugh about and making, all kinds of misogynistic jokes, and it's stuff that we just overlook. We don't engage any further. It's because there are no females that can call us out. There are no, men that may be, that may be feminism, if you want to call it that will call us out in our crowds. And I think it's conversation that we need to have. And I was chatting to Joanne Strauss, and in that conversation, we spoke about this shouldn't even be a conversation anymore. It should be something that we shouldn't.
It shouldn't do.
Yeah, and I think men, as the people of power, when it comes to power dynamics in this kind of conversation, I think we need to be the ones that should start engaging more with us, and not just overlook it and brush it to the side, and keep on with our jokes with the bros and all of these things. But it's a tough conversation.
Like to be honest, I think at some point it's sad that not all men have the same mentality, or not all of them are painted the same way. But yet there are times where everyone just gets painted with the same brush, like, oh, you are that way, so the next person is that way as well. I feel like men who have a different mentality, or who believe different, who have different values, they should be more vocal at times. And especially like you mentioned with the pros and things like that, like, okay, there are jokes and everything, but at sometimes I feel like when it comes to males or even females, people are just afraid to speak out, or afraid to speak on a certain topic, because you don't want to get too deep into conversations, or you don't feel like you're offending anyone. Like, I've always been a person, I call a spade, if that's how things are. But it's quite a sensitive topic, to be honest. It's something that I don't want to get into, because people have different ideals and notions, and everyone has their own truth. So you also need to be respectful of other people's opinions, and I think that's what's important, is that people need to value each other's opinions. Like, if you feel like someone is wrong, like, okay, I understand that you're wrong, but this is how I feel things are.
Yeah. I think it's important to also be like, okay, cool, I take your point taken, but this is and I think that's very important. You can agree to disagree, or disagree, what's it called, agree to disagree, or something like that. I don't know the saying, but
everyone learns at the end.
Yeah, I think that's what it's about. And Olivia, one final question. Apart from now, I think you've already mentioned that, you want to do a master's, but in terms of practice, what's the practice area that you want to go into? Do you want to continue to practice law? What does the future look like for Olivia Williams at this moment?
At this point, I'm not gonna lie, that is the hardest thing someone has asked me this year. I'm if it was pre-COVID, you would have had a million answers coming out of my mouth, basically, with plans that I have. At this point in time, it's a difficult time for everyone. What you thought life would be at this point is just a bit different. For me, if I do have the opportunity to go into practice and after board exams, I would love to. I'm still stuck with doing my master's part-time or full-time, but and also what area, whether it be human rights law or international environmental law, just something that I know would make a difference somewhere. And then also, as an attorney, I'm I'm finding my way. I'm not going to lie. I feel like with the rest of the candidates done is as well. What you thought you would like, you don't like. What you thought you wouldn't like, you do like. So it's
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a bit of a thing. And
Yeah.
especially with people in the community, they just assume that I feel like so many people, they don't even know I studied law. They just thought that I was a boxer and I'm doing boxing. I'm like, that is not no, that's not my career. I have a full degree.
Yeah.
So I'm still a bit, I don't know, I'm just a bit anxious and things, but I need to still sit down with myself and think what is my next step.
Yeah.
Because I know most people are having difficulties or businesses are closing down because of COVID. So we need to be realistic in that sense as well.
Yeah, it's really a scary time. But as you say, I mean, as you said earlier, I think it's still, you know, an opportunity for us to just, you know, empower ourselves and, you know, do things that can, you know, put us in good stead so that when the opportunities come, you know, that we are ready to meet those opportunities and that we are ready to run with them when they present themselves to us. Olivia, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you want to share with our viewers?
First of all, number one, I have to apologize for stuttering at times. I do get pretty worked up. I think at times when I talk and I stumble and mumble over my words like a Migos rapper. But
I think it was good.
it's actually the Eminem coming out in me. Just
Okay. So can we expect you to drop some fire track for us for December?
Never in a million years. No, just to everyone watching out there, or I know it's a tough time during COVID, like I mentioned. We need to, find ways to empower ourselves, especially as females, and during Women's Month. I've always made jokes like, no, I'm not a feminist or anything, but I've always believed that as a female, you need to empower yourselves, like I mentioned, and also what makes you stand apart. And also as females, we need to, constantly support each other. We need to, stand up against what we feel like is not right, or when we feel uncomfortable. And as friends as well, like having a supportive group of friends. So just during this time, I feel like it's people, get lost in when it comes to public holidays, like what is the meaning of, Women's Day or Women's Month. It's very important, especially during this time, and everyone should just stay safe and stay healthy and look after their families and look after themselves. And whether lots of people, lost employment during this time, it is a quite difficult time, but we should all just stay positive and
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. You are such an inspirational person, and I'm sure you've inspired someone today. And I mean, if you're watching this video with Olivia, at this interview with Olivia, thank you so much for joining us. And at Aspiration Inspiration, we always aspire to inspire before we expire. If you enjoyed this, if you found something interesting about this chat, please leave a comment, send us a DM, send us a WhatsApp, email, whatever you like. But as Aspiration Inspiration, we always aspire to inspire before we expire. Thank you so much, Olivia.
Thank you.